Welcome to this week's edition of Hockey Unfiltered with Ken Campbell. Didn't come up with a funny sidekick reference, but I am indeed the sidekick, Dylan Waugh. Just take my word for it. Today we're going to be talking about the myriad. That's right. I busted out the three-syllable words of signings that have happened recently. And then, of course, we're going to have to talk about Hockey Canada and the latest of an ever-evolving story. Ken, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I would say you're the Fred Mertz to my Ricardo.
That one went over my head.
That's I Love Lucy. It's from a long time ago.
Well, we've done the Radar O'Reilly to Colonel Potter kind of thing, right?
We have done that one? Yeah, okay.
I think we've done that one, and of course BJ Honeycutt to Hawkeye Pierce.
Right.
So before we go anywhere, check us out on Twitter at Ken_Campbell27 _Dylan Waugh. Of course, Hockey No Filter. And most importantly, check out kencampbell.substack.com for your... What's that?
I've been busy.
Ken has been busy, actually. There's been about 4 articles in the last day and a half. So we're going to start off and talk about the signings. So we're going to start with the light stuff because obviously after that, we're going to get into Hockey Canada. There's a very sincere trigger warning there. And of course, if you're feeling inundated with this stuff, then, feel free to turn us off right then and there. It's give you, full permission. So we'll start off with the fun stuff and then we'll try to make that horrific transition. So signings. These are not all free agent signings. Some of them are RFAs, some of them are re-ups, some of them are whatever. But we are going to do a rapid fire of a bunch of signings. All right. Are you ready for the first one?
Yep.
Villihusso, Detroit Red Wings, 3 years, $4.75 million.
Has the potential to look like a stroke of genius if it works out, but that's a big if.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of track record in the NHL.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Yeah.
The number one thing is, and we'll see this as a theme, I think that Detroit is trying to make show that they are built, they are done rebuilding, and you don't do that unless you have a good goalie between the pipes. And this year's goalie class was extremely weak.
Yeah.
Husso was on the upper end of that. I
don't hate a tandem of Alex Nedeljkovic and Villihusso. I don't hate it.
Oh, I like Nedeljkovic.
Yeah.
I think that he's got the potential to be a good goalie still.
Yeah, I don't hate that tandem for sure.
Yeah. Anthony DeAngelo in Philadelphia, 2 years at $5 million per.
Just it's worth every penny just to see him and John Tortorella together. Worth every penny. Worth every penny. And I predict that they are going to love each other. I predict that Anthony DeAngelo and John Tortorella are going to get along famously. First of all, because I think that the notion that players don't like playing for John Tortorella is hugely exaggerated. Almost all the players I've talked to actually liked playing for him because you know where you stand. And there's not a lot of wiggle room. And players generally just want to be told what's expected of them. Yeah. And then they go out and perform. So that'll be a fun one to watch. I mean, Philadelphia is going to be just god awful. They're going to be just terrible. They're in the Tankathon sweepstakes without question. Yeah. But it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. My only thought is just one more piece of irony in this city, the aptly named city of brotherly love. Okay, Philip Forsberg, Nashville, 8 years, $8.5 million.
Just one of those ones that just feels right. He's been there ever since he got stolen by David Poile from the Washington Capitals before he ever played a game, and he's been a legacy player. Like, he's only 27 years old, so it's not like you're signing a 31-year-old, soon to be 32-year-old Nazem Kadri to an 8-year deal. Right. You're signing a guy who's 27 who will still be, in his mid 30s when this deal comes up. The salary cap is probably going to go up. Had a great year this year, responded really, really well to the challenge that Nashville coach John Hines put in front of him, as did a couple of other players. And I think they've just got something going in Nashville. I mean, they've got those three guys up front. Tanner Jeannot had a great rookie year. Roman Josi is Roman Josi, and UC Saros is is a Vezina finalist who picks right up where Pecorine left off. So I think that if you fancy yourself a team that wants to stay at least in the hunt, you can't really let this guy go.
Yeah, I worry about what Nashville is. They are, they're in the mushy middle, right? To be frank about it. Yep. There's your hurricane blowing in, eh?
No, it's supposed to be a tornado, actually. Oh, okay. I'm this dispatch today is from the Grand Bend Bureau of Hockey Unfiltered. So,
I worry about what Nashville is. I just they might take a step forward from last year to this year. But even if they do that, then what? They go out in 7 in the first round, and 8 years bring them to 35. I mean, obviously, you just don't. You can't let a guy like that just go. But at the same time, Nashville's a team that concerns me.
Okay, well, I think it was kind of one of those no-brainer signings. If you want to be. Like I say, if you want to keep moving forward, you've still got Roman Josi for another 6 years.
Yeah.
Husso's under contract for another 3. You just went out and acquired Ryan McDonough for another 4 years. You re-upped Matthias Ekholm for 4 years. It wouldn't have made sense to go out and do all those things and then not re-sign, probably your best offensive player.
Yeah, no, I'm not debating that. They seem like a retool candidate. A lot of good pieces, not a lot of great pieces. Could they take a step back for a couple of years? And I don't think
that's what they're counting on. I don't think that's what.
No, I agree with you. I agree. Georgiev, Colorado, 3 years, $3.4 million.
Could have said Shooter Tutor, Colorado, 3 years. $3 million. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They just won the Stanley Cup with a goalie who posted the worst save percentage of a Cup winner in the Cap era. They don't need great. They don't need great. And why would you spend term and a lot of money on goaltending when you really you don't need great goaltending. You just need someone like what Darcy Kemper did. Just stop the puck. I mean, they out Tampa in Game 6. They didn't let them touch the puck. So if you're not getting chances against and you've got that kind of firepower, why would you go out and blow your brains on a goalie and or for that matter pay any substantial amount of money to keep Darcy Kemper when it really doesn't matter who you have in goal?
Yeah, it's I would think that that's even maybe a little high for Georgiev, but obviously they're bringing him in to be a starter, so they're going to have to pay him as such. But I don't disagree with you, right? I had to eat crow because I said that Kemper wasn't good enough to get it done, and it didn't even occur to me that they could just simply not let him be shot on. It didn't occur to me that was an option. If that's an option, then surely Kemper's good enough. And, and in the salary cap era, Antti Niemi won a cup. Now, was Chris Osgood, he was right before the salary cap era, his cup?
Yes. He did not win in 2000. He didn't win the cup in 2008. Who was in 2008? Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, he might have.
The excellent goaltenders that or the mediocre to bad goalies that win a cup. And when I say bad, I mean, you're a starting goalie in the NHL, right? Let's be honest with what we're saying here. But
Chris Osgood should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, that's just crazy talk. But that's just crazy talk. But
he actually did win a cup in the salary cap era and got to the final of another one. He won it in 2008 and got them to the final in 2009 with an 887 save percentage.
Right. Yeah. So, anyways, my point is to say that, winning with a bad goalie is an outlier, and I would not recommend trying it again. Moving on, Raquel, Pittsburgh, 6 years, $5 million.
Well, I mean, they've obviously made they've put their stake in the ground here, and they're still going to go for it. I don't see how this team has any path to a Stanley Cup. They're just too old. Like, I like them, and they've got good players, but their core is everybody is over 30 except for Jake Gensel, I think. And so, I mean, if you're going to do that and you go out and get Raquel at the deadline and you spend the assets that they spent, you certainly have to re-sign him. And so they did, and he's very, very good. I think he's going to fit in really nicely there, and he's going to be really, really productive there. He
adds a layer to the Pittsburgh Penguins that I like a lot. Mm-hmm. Now, that of course supposes that Crosby can once again walk into the playoffs next year, and as he was maybe in the first round, be the best player in the playoffs. And hopefully Tristan Jarry's not injured, although I don't think that goaltending lost him the series. It doesn't help, right? Having your third string goaltender start you through the whole series.
Well, you know what though? Like, I mean, this team hasn't won a first round in 5 years.
Yeah, but I mean, like last year, felt like they had the
coming back to the same. Everybody keeps talking about how Toronto does that, right? And so these guys keep coming back with the same people, and they haven't gotten out of the first round in 5 years.
Yeah.
I certainly don't see where this team is going to surprise everybody and come up and win a Stanley Cup. I just don't see it. They're too old, and they've got too much mileage on them.
Yeah, I mean, they would need to find a way to all walk into the playoffs in pristine condition, and then take off the cellophane wrapper and then play. But they don't make the playoffs if Crosby and Malkin and Letang are not grinding their way to it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Valeri Nichushkin, Colorado, re-ups, 8 years, $6.125 million.
Ding, ding, ding. And you win the overpaid player of free agency award.
Right.
Yeah, no. I think they got duped. I really do. I think he had a career year. I knew somebody was going to overpay him. I wasn't sure it was going to be Colorado. But you know what? They want to keep their team together. He was outstanding in the playoffs. Good on him. I mean, if you're going to have a career year and if you're going to be a stud in the playoffs,
do it in a contract year.
Do it when you're coming up for unrestricted free agency. Good on him. But that's an overpay, in my opinion, a very, very clear overpay.
I don't know that that's as much of an overpay as I thought it was going to be. I think that this is a classic free agency overpay where if you gave me 7 years, then I like the contract better. And if you gave me $1 million off at 5.125, I like the contract better.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as much of an overpay as I thought it was going to be in free agency. We both fall on the side of Nichushkin being overrated, myself a little bit less so. But it's the like you said about the Vegas Golden Knights midway through the year on a podcast. You said it's not the Mark Stone contracts that sink you.
Yeah.
Right. It's the Evgeny Dadonov contracts that sink you. It's those mid-tier players that are very good and very useful, but you're just spending too much money on them.
Exactly. Because the model now is you devote a big percentage of your cap space to a couple of superstars, and then you have a middle class, and then you have a bunch of guys who are coming in on 1 year deals or entry level deals.
Yeah. So moving forward, Evgeny Malkin, Pittsburgh Penguins, 4 years, $6.1 million.
Yeah. Great signing, I believe. Yeah. Like he's still a point a game guy. I think he's still got something to give. I know that the health is an issue. But another guy who, legacy player. But, now I think about it, and it's like, yeah, I just criticized them for bringing back all the same guys, right? And at some point you've got to break up the band, I think, because the day of reckoning is coming in Pittsburgh. They are going to bottom out in a very, very serious way at some point. I keep thinking it's going to happen. I keep thinking it's going to be this year or next year, and it never is. But It will be. It will be.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I'd say is that, look, you've got your top end guys locked up at reasonable AAVs, right? You've got to find a way, just like what we were talking about, you've got to find a way to clear out some of your mid-level players and bring in better mid-level players, because you've got, like, he's making the same AAV as Nichushkin. Malkin is, right? So if Malkin and Crosby's still making 8.75, I think he's still on that contract. If Crosby and Malkin are rounding out like the top end, and I guess Letang as well, are rounding out the top end of your roster, surely that gives you all kinds of money to actually make that mistake that GMs make and spend on those mid-range players. Like, that's a luxury that they should have, and they should be able to get a very quick,
but they've got some guys, like you talk about those mid-range guys. I mean, Brian Rust, I think that's too long and too much money. They've got some guys tied up. They've got some mid-level guys tied up for money that is not commensurate with what they contribute. But
that's my point, is that they should be figuring out a way to cycle that through. And if it costs them every draft pick, then that might be like you said, when is the window going to be closed? This is kind of like the whole, like, every day is a gift thing, right?
I didn't see, but I would argue the window is closed. I just, F. Petrie 34, Chris Letang 35, Brian Dumoulin 30, Jan Ruda 31, Brian Rust 30, Zucker 30, Malkin 35, Sidney Crosby 34, Jeff Carter 37. I would argue that window is closed. I don't think this team is a Stanley Cup team, but
fair enough. So I don't know what kind of a silver-tongued devil Evander Kane is, but he re-ups in Edmonton at 4 years, $5.125 million per.
Yes, he does. That's probably 2 years longer than anybody would want. But you've got to get the player back, right? He was one of the best players. He was one of the most productive players in the NHL. He was on what, a 40, 45 goal pace. Was very, very good in the playoffs. I think Edmonton needs to kind of keep that positive momentum going. And this was a good way to do it. And, they didn't have to give him term. And I think he realized that he was in a pretty good situation in Edmonton. Again, the fear is that this could go sideways anytime, under any circumstances, and can go, it could happen very, very quickly. You would hope that I always think, if you can't play in a culture like the San Jose Sharks had created, then I really worry about whether or not you can fit in anywhere. But I would hope that the Oilers are going to keep him in line. And but what's to stop him from 2 years from now, once a team, if the team starts losing and he wakes up in January and it's dark out all the time and it's freezing and that sort of thing. That's what I would worry about.
Yeah. I mean, he I guess the thing is that I didn't think that any team in the NHL, and once again, I've overestimated general managers in the NHL, but I just didn't think that any team would be willing to offer him more than a year, more than 2 years. And now the AAV would be a different situation, because that, of course, would be more specific to the team. But I just didn't think that any team would be willing to offer him more than 1 or 2 years, with the fear that, like you said, you're 2 years into the contract, you wake up mid-January, things aren't going well.
Yeah.
I would think that like a team like, Colorado or Tampa would be just being like, look, man, here's 1 year, here's $5 million, take it or leave it. So I'm surprised that Edmonton gave him.
Don't make any mistake here, Dylan. The Oilers are very fearful of that.
Of course they are.
I think they go into this with open eyes, knowing that there is a definitive risk here. But does it outweigh the risk of losing the player and losing the momentum that you've created? Partly because of what this player did after he joined the team. I mean, he was a huge part of that whole turnaround in Edmonton. After they had that just god awful month and a half. Yeah. And he was part of the solution in every way. You know what I mean? So you have to take chances on guys like that. And I think guys get signed, GM sign guys, to these deals thinking, if it's good in the first half of the deal, I'll deal with it being bad in the second half of the deal.
Yeah. Claude Giroux, Ottawa, 3 years, $6.5 million.
I mean, everybody talks about how Ottawa won free agency and is winning the summer, and this is a big reason why, obviously. I like the player. I like the fact that they only got him for 3 years. I think that's like, all things considering, that's a good signing. Yeah. I don't think they're close.
No.
I don't think they're close.
Yeah.
But they're better. They're better. They're obviously better. But remember, every team in the East that made the playoffs this year had 100 points. Who are they going to pass? Who are they going to pass?
Yeah. So, I mean, Giroux doesn't drive the bus anymore.
Mm-mm.
He does not drive the bus like he used to. Yeah. And, but that being said, so I like the contract. I like it a lot. 3 years at $6.5 million for Giroux. I thought that this guy was going to get overpaid. Like the contract a lot, but it's I don't know what he offers to Ottawa, to be honest. I don't know what gets offered there. I guess a little bit of leadership, a little bit of, whatever.
He's still a good player. He's a good player. He's still a point a game guy.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that, but I'm just saying that, Ottawa's not at a one Claude Giroux away kind of situation.
No, they're not. Yeah. They're still far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan Strome, Anaheim, 5 years, $5 million. The 5x5.
5x5 for Ryan Strome. Well, I mean, that's probably market value for him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been a very good player in New York. And I mean, in Anaheim, they're trying to move forward here. And this is a guy that I think helps them in a lot of ways. Like, he's obviously a good offensive player, brings some pedigree with him, brings some experience with him. So yeah, good signing.
Yeah. So the interesting side of that then is that with the money that the Rangers saved, they go out and sign Trocheck to 7 years times $5.635 million.
Right, for a 29-year-old, I think.
Yeah.
That's a bit of an overpay.
My thought was, how much better is Trocheck than Strome?
He's better.
No, I know he's better. How much better was my question.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
anyways,
he's a perennial 20-goal, 50-point guy. I mean, he slots in pretty well on that team. That team plays the kind of style that I think would suit him very well. That puck pursuit, move it, keep high tempo sort of thing. So he'll fit in there for the first half of that contract. I think he'll be fine. I would be worried about the later years of that contract, but I don't think anybody worries about the later years of contracts anymore. They just realize that it's a cost of doing business. If you want the guy, you gotta pay the guy, and you gotta give him term. And then you hope the salary cap goes up, and then you hope that, Arizona stays Arizona and keeps taking your bad old players to get up to the cap, and you move on.
Yeah. Something tells me that won't be the case very soon, but c'est la vie. I agree with everything you're saying about Trocheck. Good player, decent AAV, definitely going to be a real stinker. Not like normally you think it's going to be a stinker for 1 or 2 years. This one could be 3 or 4 years, really. Mikheyev goes to Vancouver for 4 years at $4.75 million.
Well, I sure hope they're not calculating his salary by goals, because because this guy has the worst hands I've seen since Jonas Höglund. Actually, that's a bit harsh. He was actually really good in the second half. Brings a lot of speed. Good payday for him. Joins an organization where he'll get a real opportunity to play a meaningful role. And I mean, Toronto wasn't going to sign him at that. They couldn't, and they wouldn't, and so good for him for getting it.
But again, that's your mid-tier player. Overpaying on the mid-tier player. And, and that's what Toronto can't even afford to make that mistake, right?
Right. No, they can't.
Yeah. Chernak, Tampa Bay, 8 years, $5.2 million.
Well, you get rid of Ryan McDonough, so you've cleaned out 6.5 right there. That one's. I mean, I think you got to look at it as a collective. You got to look at it in the context of, the Cirelli signing and the Sergachev signing. Yeah. Yeah. And when you look at it that way, it's pretty obvious that, they're making a commitment to this group and to their fan base that they want to keep this thing together. It took them a long time to get that defense core to where they wanted it. Now it's not where they wanted it because they don't have McDonough anymore. But it's still very, very good. And, I mean, that's a long contract for him, but he's a big guy. He's physical. I mean, if he just is that guy that kind of plays on your 4 to 6 range and, is more of a shutdown guy, then they're going to get what they want from him.
So let's go through those three then. Cernak, 8 years, 5.2. Sergachev, 8 years, 6.25. And Cirelli, 8 years, 6.25. Cirelli, 6.25. Sergachev, 8.5. Pardon me.
Yeah.
8 years. All three of them 8 years. Sergachev famously was on the third pairing last year, but obviously we all know that he's not a third pairing defenseman, truth be told. I mean, that's essentially, Cirelli is a center, obviously, but that's essentially their team's defense right there, because Cirelli is, a defensive center, to say the least. They definitely have said this is how they're going to run it back for a very long time. Point has 6 years left, I think. I think he signed his 8-year deal 2 years ago. I could be wrong. But they've definitely, to your point, they've said this is the group and we're going to do it. And you know what? In fairness, all three of those guys are sure bets at this point.
They are. Yeah.
You know what you're getting.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not, I mean, you can't project for injuries. So, I mean, that's something that you can't control. But if those guys all stay healthy, I mean, Anthony Cirelli is a perennial, I think now you can say he's a perennial Selke candidate, and will be for a long, long time. And
he's on the radar now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they like where they're at. I think they think this team has, a real opportunity to, be very, very good for a long time. I mean, you've still got Hedman for 3 years. You've got Stamkos for 2 more, and then he'll probably come off the books, but you've still got Kucherov, you've got Point for a long time. You've signed Nick Paul to that long-term deal.
That's right.
So, yeah. And Vasilevsky, of course, best goalie in the world. You've got him for another, 6 years?
Yeah.
So, yep.
Yep.
6 or 7.
So going on to from that to the more hilarious, Ben Sherratt in Detroit, 4 years, $4.75 million.
That's a bit of a polarizing one, isn't it?
You know what? It's not that big of a raise on what he was making.
Mm-hmm.
It's maybe $1 million a year raise on what he was making. But because I think that he signed like 3.85 in Montreal for 4 years.
Yeah.
If my memory serves. But yeah, with what Detroit's building there, one of these is not like the others. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, but I mean, he does give you some veteran presence. He obviously gives you a lot of physicality. I just feel like
no. Hang on, Ken. You just, in a nice way, said he's big and old.
Yeah. Well, that's why he's 31. And like I was going to say, I was just about to say, I just get the feeling with Ben Sherratt that when it drops off, it's not going to be gradual. It's not going to be, over a period of time and he sort of plays his way out. It's going to be like precipitous and quick and ugly.
Yeah. You know what? And you might be right because he's a decent skater and he relies a lot on his skating. And if once that goes, the many and glaring mistakes that he makes all the time will become many more
and glaring mistakes.
Well, but the thing is that he makes many and glaring mistakes, but he's actually got a decent pivot and a really good acceleration. So he makes a mistake at the blue line. Maybe a shot gets on net. Maybe something happens, but he's right there.
Yeah.
If he loses that, it's over. Every single mistake is in the back of the net.
Yeah.
So going on a run on Detroit players, Detroit really got a little frisky here. Andrew Kopp, 5 years, $5.625 million.
Like the contract, not sure about the term. A local kid, and a guy who can step in and be what what center for them.
Yeah, ideally 2, but probably 1 in their case for right now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I mean, he's a good player. I don't necessarily have an issue with the term. I think that the Kopp signing is good. The Sherratt signing is but I don't think I don't think that it's terrible. I wouldn't be losing my hair over it if I was a Detroit fan. Yeah. And then the David Braun signing, Detroit, 2 years, $4.75 million.
Yeah. Well, Kopp is going to be the number 2 center, obviously, behind Larkin. I mean, Larkin's their number 1 center, right?
Right. Yeah.
And then you've got maybe Pius Suter or whatever. So he falls in nicely into that number 2 slot, which is probably the best place for him. David Braun, I can't believe that St. Louis didn't bring this guy back.
Shocked me too.
Warrior kind of guy, really can really help a power play. Low risk signing, only 2 years. There's a full, I think no move and no trade. But that shouldn't worry anybody too much. I think that's a great pickup.
Yeah. So Detroit obviously flying their flag and saying the rebuild is, if not completely over, we're on the other side of it.
Yeah.
To quote Winston Churchill, this is not the beginning of the end, but merely the end of the beginning.
It's actually the beginning of the beginning, isn't it?
All right. Well, whatever.
Yeah. Again, though, I'm not sure I see that, that the rebuild is over. Like, yeah.
But to go out and to drop 15, let's see here, 4, 9, 13 million bucks, 14 million bucks in free agency.
Yeah.
On 3 players normally is an indication that if the rebuild is not completely over, we are planning on making a push for the playoffs. And I don't think that they make the playoffs in the division that they're in, but I think that they make pushes here.
I think it's an indication that you had a lot of cap space. And we don't. Well, it's true. I mean, we don't see that anymore. We don't see any. We don't, and they still got they've still got about $10 million in cap space. So they could still go out and make another splash,
Yeah.
As a Cadreau. Now you have a center ice core. Now you have a center ice core with Dylan Larkin as your number 1, Kopp as your number 2, Cadreau as your number 3.
Yeah. Jack Campbell, Edmonton Oilers, 5 years, $5 million per. To the surprise of no one.
Yeah, to the surprise of no one. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, they missed out on Jacob Markstrom, right? Last year, Edmonton. They thought they had him. It would have been perfect. They probably would have. They probably, would have not been in the spot they were in at all last year if they had even decent goaltending. They obviously had to, and you said it. I mean, the goalie market was pretty thin. There wasn't a lot to choose from. Yeah. And Campbell was not going to budge on his 5 years at $5 million. His body of work doesn't suggest that he deserves that. He hasn't been a true number 1 goalie with any sort of consistency ever, including last year. So yeah, I mean, that's a real gamble, a real roll of the dice. And we'll see how it turns out. But I mean, the Oilers can, like a lot of these teams, can score their way out of a lot of the troubles that they get themselves into. And I mean, we've seen absolute crystal clear, perfect examples of that last year and in the playoffs.
Campbell, to me, he was the best goalie on the market.
Yeah.
That's not saying a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. I do. But But that being said, like Markstrom signed for 5x6 and Markstrom had a Vezina nomination under his belt.
Right.
So Campbell signing by 5x5, another year of another flat cap or more or less flat cap, so a tighter financial situation and signing for almost as much money. Markstrom being younger when he signed, Campbell being older when he signed. It's just, It's crazy to me, but it really just shows how squeezed the goalie market was. And speaking of squeezed goalie markets, Campbell wasn't the most highly paid goaltender. Darcy Kemper, Washington Capitals, 5 years, $5.25 million.
Well, I mean, he was going to get that somewhere, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, again, he's just like, he is good. He is good.
Right.
He's not a bad goalie, and he's not a great goalie. He's not a goalie who steals games for you. He once was maybe that kind of guy, but he's not anymore. Yeah. 5 years at $5 million. That's, I mean, for a guy that's got a Stanley Cup ring, and that was the going rate. And obviously Washington, had issues with their goaltending last year, and they think that this is a guy that can come in and bring some stability. I'm not 100% sure about that, but again, he's good. He's good enough.
Honestly, like if I were a general manager, I would either pay one of the top 3 goalies in the league any amount of money that they wanted, a la Andrei Vasilevsky, or I would never be paying a goalie over like $3 million.
Right.
Because after the top 3 goalies in this league, after your Vasilevsky, after your Shesterkin, Markstrom to an extent. I
mean, I think Thatcher Demko might get into that conversation.
There's a few things that concern me about Thatcher Demko, but they're not overcomable. Anyways, but after the top few guys, you really you don't know.
No, you don't. You're guessing. You're totally guessing. I
wouldn't go as far as to say guessing, but I'd say that
they aren't guessing right now.
Okay, look,
they're just praying and hoping, and doing the rosary every day, and I mean, they're just hoping against hope.
when goaltenders, and I've talked to a few goalies that have gone through this, when they retire from whatever pro or wherever they were playing, right? I talked to one goalie that played college collegiate here, and he said that when he went to playing beer league, he was a sieve. He couldn't stop a puck.
Wow. And
it's because it is so hard for a goaltender to greatly overperform their defensive situation, which means that, if I've got a team that's poor defensively, I would not sign a goaltender as the solution to that poor defensive team, right? And so my point is that once you get out of those top 3 or top 4 goaltenders that are just absolute freaks of nature, it doesn't matter how they play, what team they play on, it doesn't matter. They're stopping pucks, right? Once you get out of those guys, then you're at a situation where it's like sign your league average goalie to as little money as possible and then build the defense and build a situation that they can perform in, right? Elvis Merzlikins was like considered the next great thing when Columbus was playing well defensively, and then they stopped playing well defensively, and he fell apart like a cheap chair. Why did that happen? Are we going to turn around and say that Merzlikins is a completely different person today as he was yesterday? Probably not, right? So I would not be paying for these mid range expensive goaltenders. Moving forward, Johnny Cadreau, the least surprising one of this
that was
signing period.
Yeah.
Everybody called it. Columbus Blue Jackets, 7 years, $9.75 million. Can I tell you quickly what this says to me?
What does it say?
Teams are scared of hitting that $10 million marker.
Okay.
They don't want to do it.
Well, they would have done it in Calgary.
Yeah?
I probably would have done it in Calgary. I mean, he had an offer there that was better than anywhere he could have gone, including back home. I mean, this one is, I don't know why he did it. You don't know why he did it. A lot of people don't know why he did it. But that doesn't mean he was stupid for doing it. I mean,
no,
he had a choice. He had a choice, and he made his choice. And he sort of justified it by saying, well, it's closer to home, but it's not too close to home, which is kind of, when you think about it, that's actually some fairly sound logic. I always wonder if him and Eric Goodbranson weren't like clandestine, like best buddies or something, because they both signed with Columbus, and Eric Goodbranson got a lot more money than he probably should have.
Yeah. Did you ever watch Everybody Loves Raymond?
I did.
He was discussing where he wanted to buy his house. And he's like, so this is my parents' house. And he's like, anything within this circle, is like my parents will come over all the time. Anything outside of this circle, and he draws like a larger circle, then they become overnight guests. So the trick is that this little belt, that's the Goldilocks zone. That's where we want to buy a house where they won't be able to come over all the time, but they won't stay overnight. They won't
stay overnight. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So there's the two, not close to home, but not too close to home.
Yeah.
I mean, good on Columbus. I don't really see what it does for their team, to be honest. Like, I just, like, again, I don't see how that team is being.
You don't think Johnny Gaudreau feeding Patrick Laine is going to be something that helps Columbus?
Right. I mean, that's if they've got Patrick Laine next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you made an assumption there, my friend.
They'll have him next year. They'll have him next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Columbus is one of these teams where I really just don't know what they're trying to do here. Right? I really just don't know what they're trying to do in terms of identity or.
I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to prove that it's a place where players should want to come and play. I mean, this is a complete and utter.
Yeah, just go and ask Pierre-Luc Dubois.
Yeah, well, this is a complete 180 from what has transpired over the past few years with this team. Like, think about this team. They lost Artemi Panarin. They lost Sergei Bobrovsky. They lost Matt Duchene. They lost Seth Jones. They lost Pierre-Luc Dubois. They've lost, I mean, at some point you've got to say, hey, we're going to grab one of these guys,
Yeah.
And I mean, when you have a guy of that talent level who's had that kind of year, who's still only 28, I think you kind of sign him, and then you worry about building around him.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, that's a good point. That's a good point. The fact that was his career year also a little bit concerns me about Cadreau, but I could be wrong there.
Mm-hmm.
Arturi Lehkonen, Colorado Avalanche, re-ups, 5 years, $4.5 million.
I think that could be one of those ones that is that's one of those mid-range ones that is great. Like that's a great deal.
That's the exception to the rule.
Guy scores big goals. He plays hard. He can chip in offensively if you need him to. He's low maintenance. I mean, that's a GM's dream right there, is to get a guy like Arturi Lehkonen on a long-term deal at $4 million. That's just chef's kiss for
the term that gets way overused on Twitter, and I'm going to use it right now because I reserved it for this exact signing. That's a tidy bit of business.
It is a tidy bit of business. Yep.
So sick of that term, but I had to reserve it for the Arturi Lehkonen one. Here's an interesting one. Andre Palat, New Jersey, 5 years, $6 million.
Yeah. I'm wondering if, I mean, I think he was kind of New Jersey's consolation prize for not getting Johnny Gaudreau, because I think they really thought they were in on him for sure. I think they thought they had a very, very good chance of getting him. So that's kind of the consolation prize.
What interested me is that it wasn't really that much term and money.
Right. It was still more term and money, it was still more money than Tampa Bay could offer on a long-term deal. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty, it's pretty reasonable.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I'm saying, is that it wasn't a ton of term and money. And so you really wonder, I mean, like, I guess what I'm saying is Tampa Bay signing Cirelli to that contract and then letting Palat walk.
Right.
That's interesting. That was an interesting one to me.
Not to me. I mean, if you're gonna have to let one of those guys go, you're gonna keep Anthony Cirelli and let Andre Palat walk 7 days a week, in my opinion.
Okay. All right.
Oh yeah. No, Anthony Cirelli is an elite defensive player in this league. He's going to be a Selke Trophy winner. He is. I think that's one that you do 7 days a week.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. No, but I mean, it depends on what you value in a player.
Right.
Because Palat brings a lot to the table.
Yep.
And so that proves that Brisebois, values what you value in a player with that elite defensive player in Cirelli. Finally, last one to look at, Josh Norris signs his big one in Ottawa, 8 years, $7.95 million.
Yep. Boy, that Erik Karlsson trade is looking better and better for Ottawa all the time, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, no kidding.
Yeah, he was the prospect in that trade, and no, I mean that's part of the reason why everybody thinks Ottawa did so well this summer, right? I mean, they got rid of Matt Murray, they got Max Talbot. Wow, that's an upgrade.
Cam Talbot,
Max Talbot.
Yeah, if I'm a Leafs fan, I'm so pissed about that. I can't believe that.
I can't either. But no, obviously along with a core group of young guys, of which they thought Colin White was going to be a part, but it turns out he's not. Core player. And in Ottawa, you have to lock up those guys. I mean, you can't let them do the bridge and then get to 26, 27, and then they're in the prime of their career. What
this says to me is, Ottawa says to Josh Norris, "We like you almost as much as Montreal likes Nick Suzuki." And Norris says, "How much almost?" And they say, "About $50,000 less."
Yeah, okay.
A year. That being said.
All right. Over the course of 8 years, that's $400,000, buddy.
I wouldn't say no to an extra $400,000. All right. So check out kencampbell.substack.com. Check out the Hockey Podcast Network. Check us out on YouTube, Hockey Unfiltered. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts. Leave a review, like, subscribe, all that great stuff. Leave comments. We read them. We love them. We laugh at them sometimes. We love even the trolls kind of give us a chuckle if they're clever enough. But
the action never ends at DraftKings Sportsbook, especially this summer. With tons of ways to bet on all your favorite sports, you can fuel your fandom and feel the heat of the season like never before. Plus, right now, DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's right. Make your first bet up to $1,000, and if it doesn't win, you'll get another shot to cash in. You can throw down on all the major action for baseball, golf, MMA, and more. Plus, with same-game parlays, spreads, money lines, over-unders, and props, your betting options feel endless. Best of all, DraftKings is safe, secure, and reliable. You can deposit and withdraw your cash whenever you want. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code THPN, make your first deposit, and get a risk-free bet up to $1,000. That's promo code THPN, only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
It's time to switch over into a more serious subject, which is the ongoing situation with Hockey Canada. Now, Ken, you've written several articles recently about this situation, and there's a trigger warning, content warning. We are not going to be messing around with our terminology. Mm-hmm. And so that being said, feel free to turn off now, but here it goes. The alleged gang rape by members of Team Canada. I have a few questions for you about some of the statements released and some of the things coming out as you've been reporting on it.
Okay.
My one question is, do you think that the perpetrators were necessarily members of Team Canada? Because there seems to be some openness in the language that suggests that they could have just been playing in the CHL and being there for the gala and not being members of Team Canada.
Okay, well, the alleged perpetrators, not perpetrators, but the alleged perpetrators.
Pardon me, yeah.
I don't think there's any doubt that some of them were members of Team Canada.
Right.
There is the possibility that some of them were not. They were all CHL players. 2 of them were born in 1999. 6 of them were born in 1998. We know that from the statement of claim that was filed by the victim, the alleged victim. So, yeah, I mean, there were members of that team that were involved in something. Whether that was consensual or not is open to interpretation. What exactly happened, and we are no closer to knowing. In fact, we're probably further away from knowing, what actually happened, whether or not it was consensual. Who was involved and all those sorts of things. We're further away from the truth than we probably were, a week or two ago.
The waters have been muddied.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. And that actually brings up my next real question on this, and then we can launch into the more generalized discussion. In several of the statements, I'm looking now at the statement that in one of your later articles you released yesterday on Dylan Dubé, for example. The quote is, Dylan did not engage in any wrongdoing.
Right. And
he cooperated fully with the independent London Police Service investigation, yada, yada. But wrongdoing is a broad term.
Oh, yeah.
It could mean that they're suggesting that he was an alleged perpetrator, but to your point, it was consensual.
Well, I mean, there have been players who have come out and said, I was not part of this. I was not there.
Right.
I did not witness it. You know, that's far different from saying I was, X player was cleared of wrongdoing. Yeah. I mean, so what, what the agent or what the lawyer is saying in that respect is, yeah, he was cleared of any wrongdoing. They said that about Kel Clegg,
but they didn't say cleared of wrongdoing.
Yeah, they did. Say, I think they did say cleared of wrongdoing. I think they did say they were cleared of any wrongdoing because there were no charges laid, obviously, right?
The quote is, Dylan did not engage in any wrongdoing.
Read it to the end, though.
And he cooperated fully with the Independent London Police Service investigation 2018, through which all players were then cleared of any wrongdoing. Okay, fair enough. I'm sorry.
So he's saying they were cleared of any wrongdoing.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, I mean, there's some ambiguity there for sure.
Yeah.
There's still some puzzle pieces to put together here.
Yeah.
And the wild card in all of this, again, is that, it says in the statement of claim that the players were CHL players who included but were not restricted to the 2018 Canadian World Junior Team. So it's really impossible to say who was and who wasn't involved, unless a player, even if a player comes out and says he wasn't involved and he didn't, we're taking his word at it, right, at this moment. So, there are players who are getting out in front of this. There are players who are getting out in front of this.
Yeah.
And they are, they are saying, which is what I wanted to suss out 2 months ago when I started, sort of calling around. I got in touch with very shortly after this happened, I got in touch with every agent of every player and asked that question. I asked 3 questions. I said, number one, did your client participate in the investigation? Number 2, if so, what did he tell investigators? And number 3, is there anything that your client wants to put on the record about this?
Yeah. I'm sorry. There's a noise on your end, Ken. It stopped.
It's just my phone buzzing.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So, and I heard back from, I think 5 or 6 of the 18, or of the 22.
There's an argument in it, and it's used a lot oftentimes in policing, and it's used to the detriment of society to say, if you're not guilty, then you have nothing to hide. Right. And that's often used, to justify police shakedowns and stuff like this that obviously, really infringe on our civil liberties and our, but in a situation like this, where it's public and you're talking about 8 players out of a large team and an even larger group of potential players, what you're doing is in to my eyes, or to my opinion, offering the option for players to say, to clear their names, to not have to be besmirched by, by this allegation, this horrific allegation, and to clear their names. Now, I've got another question, which is, in some of these statements that lawyers are releasing, do they count as a sort of affidavit, if you will, in the sense that if a player releases a thing that says, I was not involved in any incident that night, and then and then it comes out that they were, is there a perjury element to this? Are there more legal ramifications to that?
No, there's nothing, because it's not admissible evidence. It hasn't been cross-examined. He hasn't been deposed. He's just putting it out there in the public forum. So that's been an important question that I've seen come up again and again, because of course, when people are dubious of seeing that statement, their question is then, would anything go wrong for that player if that statement comes out as false? Well, in the court of public opinion, things could go very, very wrong. It
wouldn't go more wrong than
if the player's being ingenuous, then in the court of public opinion, things could go very, very wrong for that player. But when I started to sort of dig into this, it was with that in the spirit of, why should everybody have to wear a scarlet letter here?
Yeah.
My whole sort of Like I'm never going to write about any of these guys until I figure out who did it. Like I'm not going to go writing some, in-depth feature praising the merits of player X without knowing for sure whether or not he was involved. And I think it's, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. I mean, we're going to find out what happened. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's, Hockey Canada really, really could not have handled this any worse than they did.
Yeah.
Regardless of what it was, running the gamut from nothing happened, like absolutely nothing, and it was totally fabricated, to gang rape, they could not have handled this any worse. And my point that I wrote about this week is the culture of silence is to blame. The culture of secrecy that surrounds this game is to blame.
Yeah.
Hockey Canada wanted this to go away, whether it had merit or not. And it I've been told that they paid out the full amount, the $3.55 million, spent $400,000 on an investigation that went basically nowhere.
That they canceled.
Yeah. Well, they
cut it short
now, but it's reestablished now. But they, they did this without any due process, without giving any players any opportunity to defend themselves. So I mean, and when you're a public institution, as Hockey Canada is, that receives public funding from governments and receives all this sponsorship money, there's got to be way more accountability than that. And no matter, no wonder they didn't go through their insurance. I'm sure their insurance would have any insurance company would have vigorously contested this and at least tried to get to, the root of the matter to see if it had any merit.
Yeah. Now, you wrote in an article yesterday, actually, and I thought it was very fascinating. Because, of course, we all know that a certain amount of nepotism happens in really any industry, to be honest.
In hockey, it's pretty prevalent in hockey, yeah.
Well, you wrote some very interesting connections between the insurance company and Hockey Canada. Right.
Yeah, well, the former VP of insurance and insurance, basically, for Hockey Canada was a guy by the name of Glenn McCurdy. He has since retired. But at the time, he was Hockey Canada's insurance guy and the guy who, quite frankly, would settle these claims. He's settled this one and, numerous others with people over the years. And, I mean, his daughter is employed by the company that is Hockey Canada's insurer. And she's what they call a claims team specialist. Right. So she's working on claims, right?
Yeah.
At the very least, that's horrible optics at the very least.
Yeah.
At the very least, even if there's no impropriety whatsoever, there's no suggestion of impropriety if she recused herself or whatever.
Yeah.
That's horrible optics right there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's that kind of thing that to me is part of the culture of hockey. It's that hockey seems to view itself as this entity unto itself that can take care of its own problems on its own terms, and don't stick your nose in, we'll take care of it. And when that happens, I think you get things like this occurring.
There used to be a common expression, and it was common, and then it was sort of lampooned for a little while, and now it's not used at all. And the expression was, well, he's an artist, he lives by different rules.
Mm-hmm.
Or an artist lives by different rules, right? And then the Me Too movement came out. Right? And that was where I think that the death of that expression really happened. I don't remember hearing that expression ever since Me Too. And there was this all of a sudden realization by just how different the rules that a lot of people in Hollywood, quote unquote artists, thought that they lived by. And there was a watershed moment. And what really was the most important part about Me Too, in my opinion, was not just beyond the obvious most important part, which is the empowering and the normalizing of people to step forward under these circumstances. When we live in a society where almost 90% of all sexual assault goes unreported, right? But what was so important was this understanding that there was a system in place, a systemic issue that enabled these people in power to do this, right? And so even if it wasn't like specifically like we're creating a system to, do this, but that cone of silence, that too big to fail, that whole thing was enabling people to do this. And so what we're now seeing, and why I'm a little bit optimistic about this in hockey's case, with both the Chicago Blackhawks and Team Canada now, we now have a situation where we're no longer just saying, well, it's just a few bad apples. Oh, boys will be boys. We no longer have a situation. We now have the alleged perpetrators seem as though they will be held to account once this is all shaken out. And the people at the top, the people in power that enabled, turned a blind eye, and paid off in order to make this all just go away, will also be held to account.
Yeah.
And we are now entering a situation where if you are the assistant GM, if you are the director of player personnel, if you are a not top, but not middle management, kind of upper echelon management, and you're privy to something for a team, not just for your own moral compass, but for your own self-preservation,
right?
You need to say something. You need to call the police. You need to make sure that you have crossed every T and dotted every I in order to, do your due diligence in that situation.
It's basically a matter of doing the right thing being forced upon people now. You know what I mean? Like for a lot of us, it's just a matter of, well, that's what you would do.
I wouldn't think twice about it.
The right thing to do. But now people are being forced into a position where they have to do the right thing. You know what I mean? And so, maybe this is a watershed moment. It might be. It may very well be. This might be the time of reckoning for this game and this sport and how it treats some people and how it, and to me, the whole, to me, these things fester and grow and thrive in the dark. They're like vampires, right? You bring it out into the light and it cuts down, it really loses a lot of its power. So to me, that's the bit, the toxic masculinity in this sport is, and I'm sure it's in other sports, but I don't care about other sports. I don't care about other pursuits. This is what I live in. Yeah. The toxic masculinity in hockey is certainly the problem. Yeah. But I think it's what drives that and what allows that to manifest itself is the real problem. And that is the culture of secrecy. That's the power imbalance that you have, between the people who run the game and those who are trying to, establish themselves in the game. I think those are the real sort of inequities that have to be addressed here rather than, obviously that has to be addressed too, but I think that one, the incidents will there won't be as many if there's a lot more checks and balances in place in the first place.
I completely agree with you. I was having a conversation recently with a friend of mine who is another coach in the city. And we were talking about this is actually before these allegations have come out, but we were talking about the anti-intellectualism that exists in hockey, but also in all sports, in most sports, I should say. And this idea that we've both coached kids that we know to be exceptionally bright, gifted kids. And they talk like absolute idiots because they just don't want to be different. They don't want to stand out. They don't want to be made fun of for being smart. And there's this anti-intellectualism that exists in sports. And I think it breeds into that toxic masculinity because, you know, if somebody is willing to dumb down their speech for the sake of fitting in, then are they not going to be willing to, you know, beat their chests and act all macho for the sake of fitting in? And are they not going to be willing to turn a blind eye when they see when somebody says something untoward in the change room for the sake of fitting in? Like that is the system that exists right now, and the onus truly is on the coaches and from the top down to change that culture. Because we're talking about kids. I'm talking about 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds, right? We're talking about kids, and the onus is truly from the top down to change that culture and to nurture those natural abilities in these athletes.
Yeah, well, I just saw something on Twitter today, and I can't remember. I think it was somebody by the name of Willette posted it today. His son was in a hockey camp, and he asked for pride tape, the multicolored tape for his stick, because he wanted to support his sister for something. Was pulled into the dressing room. Was doused with water and told to leave. You gay boy or whatever. That is a Twitter version of something that is alleged to have happened in the United States, and that was today. That was today. So we've still got a long way to go.
I can honestly say I've never borne witness to anything like that. I'd have a broken hand after bearing witness to something like that.
Yeah,
that's absolutely outrageous.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to find it right now, and I saw it this morning. But I mean, it's, it just tells you that with every step forward, there's always seems to be a step or two back. So
now, I don't know that there seems to be a step or two back. I'm going to play the perpetual optimist here. I think that with every step forward, there is more realization of how far there is to go.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Because that's not a step back. Presumably that's already been happening. Right? The fact that person now feels comfortable to put that on Twitter and to put that out in the world, that's another step forward.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just playing the perpetual optimist here. But obviously, stay tuned to Ken on Twitter, Ken_Campbell27, and his Substack, KenCampbell.substack.com, because there's tons of articles coming out about this constantly, as it's such an evolving story. And like Ken just said, it's, the waters are being muddied right now. There is as you were writing in an article recently, there are very specific pieces of information being leaked by the different sides in order to push an agenda or a narrative. And so there's a lot going on, but I think we'll wrap it up there. Right, Ken?
Yeah, I think that's probably where we want to. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you if for those of you that stuck with us through this less enjoyable half of the podcast. Check out at Hockey No Filter on Twitter. Check us out on YouTube, Hockey Unfiltered. Check us out on Hockey Podcast Network. Check us out on Apple Podcasts. Leave a review, like, subscribe, leave comments on YouTube. We read them all, love it. It's all good. Thank you, and hopefully we'll talk to you next week.